Welcome to Amra's Armchair Anecdotes. I'm Amra Pajalich, writer, teacher and storyteller. Pull up a chair and let's dive into stories about writing, life and lessons learned, sharing wisdom from my armchair to yours. You can find the episode show notes, your free episode handouts and my how-to guides at amrapajalich.com/podcast. And now it's time to dive in. Welcome to Amra's Armchair's Anecdotes. Today I'm talking to Mirela Cufurovic, another Bosnian, who is a historian, writer, interviewer, and we met because she's founder of Tea Time with Mirela, an Instagram interview series with female authors in Australia. So she did long-form discussions with writers, academics, artists, and community voices, and built a platform that values nuance, intellectual curiosity, and genuine dialogue. And she is now founder of the Australian Muslim Review on Substack, an independent publication dedicated to amplifying Muslim voices, ideas, literature, history, and cultural commentary. Her work explores storytelling, historical memory, representation, and You're drawing on your background as a historian. You approach interviews and writing with a deep interest about how stories are preserved, interpreted, and shared. Thank you so much for joining me.
It's lovely to be here. Can't wait to dive into a conversation with you.
Yeah, we met because you started Tea Time with Mirela and you invited me to be on. What made you start that project?
I've always had an interest of connecting with people. And because of my interest in literature, and every time I read a book, I fall in love with the author, and I'm like, okay, this is a real human being wrote this, and I want to get to know the human behind the stories. And I started Tea Time with Mirela because I wanted to have those conversations with authors like yourself to better understand your writing process. And yes, it was kind of a learning experience for me. So to learn more about writing and how writers approach their writing process and how they do storytelling. But I also wanted to create a platform that was available to audiences. And that is why I thought, hey, let me try this. It's not perfect. I'm not an expert at doing recording or podcasts, but I just wanted some genuine connection and genuine interaction.
Yeah, and why did you choose Instagram as a platform for that?
So Instagram as a platform, I think one reason was because I wanted to create a live event. And, interestingly, every single author I have interviewed had never used Instagram Live before for an interview. So I always found that very interesting. Like every time they say, oh, this is my first time, what do I do? So I would always have like a 10-minute before the interview, let's do a mic check. Let's see if everything works before the live. It goes to the audience. And that was also good because then it helps authors also experience something new, which I hope that they took an experience from it. But also to just draw in an audience that could be engaged in the conversation in real time. And I think as someone who lives in regional New South Wales, a lot of the opportunities for author events and author conversations are down in Sydney, which is, and they often occur at night, often on Tuesdays for some reason. And it's just for me to travel to attend an hour or a 2-hour event and come back home. It's stifling and it's very, the opportunity isn't there. So I thought, well, let me try and create a platform where I get to have this opportunity, but also I get to extend the opportunity for anyone to access this at any time that is convenient for them. So although it is live, I do save the live onto my profile so that you can go back and listen and add your comments or questions or reach out to the author directly after.
Yeah, quite actually. I did one live event where someone organized it and coordinated it, but I do think that's a missed opportunity. I guess the thing about it, though, it is pressure. Like I'm interviewing now, but I'm doing it online. I can edit afterwards. I can remove anything. And so there is that more of that safety to it.
Yeah.
Whereas with the live, there is some pressure. It is quite, but there is also as you said, that interaction. So what were some things that surprised you about it when you were doing those live events?
I suppose for me it was getting the seeing people tune in and seeing people ask questions and being genuinely really interested in the conversation. And that would be one surprise. The other surprise is getting messages afterward and saying how much they love the interview or saying how much they love the questions. Because as you said, the pressure is on, and preparing for those interviews was very stressful because I was fixating on the questions that I wanted to ask. And the tea time sessions were organic. Like I tried to make them as organic as possible. So I didn't want to have like these predetermined questions. I wanted the author to just speak to their own experiences and drive off that. But also that was very pressure intensive as well, because it's like, okay, well, it depends on what they say. I have to like be quick and think on my feet about the questions that I want to say, because I don't have that opportunity to edit, and whatever is saved, it is saved. Like I can't change that. But I will relate one funny incident that happened when I was interviewing Charlene Oneself for what was her book called again? The Great Undoing. And it was daytime. It was in the morning. I usually have my sessions at night where I don't have to. My kids are looked after. And at this one particular day, my daughter was home, and I said to her, "Do not interrupt me. I have a very important interview." And she did interrupt me, and she opened the door. And she's like, "Mama, I have to go do a poo in the toilet." And I just went, okay, just go and do the poo in the toilet. It's fine. You can wipe yourself. She's like, "But I have to really do a big poo." And I'm like, okay. And then I did have to cut that interview short because I had to tend to her. But that was one very funny incident. And I've never, like, it's something that I think I'll never forget.
Yeah, but having said that, we all did so many online things during COVID and really got into
Yeah,
it. And then we've got these beautiful memes and all of these things that were
yeah,
happening in real time that really was fabulous. I mean, we met because you did interview me, and
yeah.
then we've sort of, collaborated on an event where you launched my book in Sydney, and we were hoping, I'm sure we will collect more. There were some other things that were possibly in the works that haven't worked out, but we will. And you've got the new project that you're doing, which we'll talk about in a moment. What other connections have happened? Like, because sometimes we have ideas of creative projects we want to do, but then you're like, what's the point of this and what's the point of that? And so what I loved about this is you just threw yourself into it, you tried it,
Mm.
things happen. So have there been other happy things that have happened from it in terms of your professional development?
Think for me, one of the best things that have emerged is just connecting with the authors and developing somewhat, I mean, in some cases acquaintances, but also then in others like friendships, like yourself included. So I think that has been the biggest highlight for me. And it's just so great to be able to be in a space where I get to speak with people that I admire and work, like to talk about their work and I think ultimately the biggest reason why I also wanted to do the tea time sessions is I wanted to, provide a platform for authors to just talk about their books in a low pressure setting, and just why not, like, to champion their work? Because like I'm a fan, so why not introduce their work to other people that might potentially be interested in the same work? So I think for me, it's the connections with the authors themselves that have been the biggest highlight. And, to this day, there are some that I keep, continue to talk to and, just connect and providing opportunities. And I think for example, there was one author so we did your book launch together, which was fantastic. And then recently I was invited to try and find authors to attend the International Women's Day event in Oberon, in a rural town in New South Wales. And I just went, well, I've made these connections with these authors. Let me see who might be interested. And I interviewed Natalia, who wrote the Hailstones Fell Without Rain. And from there, we developed a really cool friendship. And I went to her book launch and things like that. And then I invited her to attend this International Women's Day event, and she came. So it was like, if I hadn't put myself out there and made these connections, I also wouldn't have opportunities further amplify their work and further provide platforms for them to, to have their work exposed to different audiences and to kind of challenge opinions about who gets to write stories and, things like that. Because in this town, it's majority white. And, I think the authors that I had booked in for this International Women's Day event were all diverse. And I remember one person telling me that, oh, this panel might be too diverse. I'm like, well, there's no such thing as too much diversity. Like, this is the panel that's going to happen and that's going to occur. And I think it's very important to challenge, you know, assumptions or stereotypes or whatever it is about what it means to be Australian, I suppose. And I think that in the end, it ended up being such a wonderful event. We got some great feedback, and it challenged a lot of people's perspectives, which I think is also something that I am passionate about.
Yeah, and I mean, because we come from backgrounds and we come from, Bosnian diaspora, and
Mm,
our people were discriminated against
yeah.
because of their religion. And so that is something that is something that I also take pride in with my
Mm,
podcast. And so listening to you is actually quite inspirational because it's like, I am on the right path. I'm doing my little tiny corner of the internet
yeah.
and I'm having fun. And who knows
Mm.
where it will lead.
Exactly. I think that's the thing. It's who knows what's going to happen. And I think that's the fun part of it. I think that's the fun part of starting projects like this, because you go in with an idea, but then it can take you into surprising places.
Exactly. And that's what I'm finding I'm really enjoying. And then you put all of your tea time on Substack, which was actually the first time I really interacted with that platform
Okay.
because you put it all up and then you added me as a collaborator and I went on Substack and I'm like, oh my gosh, this looks so beautiful. Like you did gorgeous layout, gorgeous presentation and, put it in a new format. Did that also lead to, people, are you still continuing that series? What's going on with it now?
So just to answer the first part of your question, put it on Substack because I have multiple times tried to move away from Instagram, but I seem stuck there. But one day it will happen. So my motivation to put it on Substack was to try and get off any meta platform for a number of reasons. And this is the first feedback I've received from someone who has engaged with the interviews on Substack. I am getting some engagement, but nothing that, someone has just given me feedback about. So I'm not sure how well it's going or how many views it's getting or anything like that. I am behind on updating the 2025 interviews. I do need to put them up. And to answer the second question, I have put the tea time sessions on pause, mainly because I did start a new project, which we will talk about, but also because I am in the final year of my PhD and I am very much behind on my writing. So I am trying to focus more on doing things that are directly related to my PhD, and also that is going to help strengthen my own writing process, and also to stop myself from reading books that I shouldn't be reading, because I've got a whole bunch of nonfiction books related to my PhD that I desperately need to catch up on. So that is the reason why it's on hold and I haven't had any interviews done for 2026.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? We are very ambitious women
Yeah.
with so many things we want to do, but only so much time now. So I wanted to move on to talk about, your new project on Substack, which is the Australian Muslim Review. So can you tell us about that first?
So this project emerged from, it actually was inspired by my research, my PhD research. So my PhD research is looking at Australian Muslim identity. And I want to understand whether there is an identity integration of Muslims in Australia, where they see themselves as Australians and as Muslims at the same time. And to understand this, I'm looking at it from an emotional perspective. So how does emotion shape this development? And because it's related to identity and the idea of what it means to be Australian, but also the idea of what it means to be Muslim. And then with my love for literature, and I've constantly been feeling like I'm stuck in the middle. Like I want to be a historian, I want to get into history, but I also want to be a writer, and I love writing. And I thought, hey, I can bridge these two things together, and I'm going to start this Australian Muslim review. So that's where the inspiration of it came from. The reason why I wanted to do it was because I also realized that there was no platform where you could just go and be like, hey, where are books written by Muslims in Australia? What are they? And are people talking about it? And how are they talking about it? And so I thought, if I can start something like this, number one, it's going to put books written by Muslims in Australia in one place. Number two, it's going to encourage cross-cultural dialogue, which is also my aim. So it's not just a space for Muslims to access, it's also a space for all Australians to access, because I want all Australians to know, whether you're Muslim or non-Muslim, that, you know, there is literature written by Muslims, and this literature has a very important role in understanding Muslim identity in Australia, and that we exist and we have a right to exist as Australians and as Muslims. It's still a learning process, but it's sharpening my writing skills, and it's also sharpening my critical thinking skills, which is something I definitely need as I move into finalizing my PhD this year.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I really enjoyed the process. I wanted to do it, and then I was like piking, where I was like, oh, I don't know if I can do it. And then I did it. And it was really great, you know, seeing you in that editorial role
Okay.
and doing that aspect of it too. And it was also quite inspirational, because I get such a buzz from seeing, especially, you know, women just trying different creative areas and kind of, you know, coming up with ideas, putting them out there and just building on it. And so that was also really great. And, you know, we can never have enough conversations about books,
Yes.
news about books, you know, pushing all of that, which is really, really great. So, you know, in terms of that, like I don't know if you've interacted enough with, you know, mainstream publishing spaces, but you're kind of seeing what some of the limitations are, and
Yeah.
you're wanting to redress that. So can you speak to that a little bit?
So so aside from the role that I have doing these two projects, I'm also a book reviews editor for History Australia. And this role is similar to what I'm doing with the Australian Muslim Review. It's also slightly inspired my like the way that I've platformed the review itself. But as part of this role, I have to reach out to publishers for review copies of books, and I have to kind of figure out what's out there, what are historians writing about, and are there other historians who would like to review their colleagues' work, et cetera, et cetera. And I started just noticing a pattern in the kind of historical topics that are out there. And I also realized that there's not a lot being published or written about when it concerns Muslims and Muslim history. And in my own experience, so I did write a creative nonfiction work on a Muslim pioneer from Melbourne, his name is Shah Fahmy Imam. And the book's finalized, it's all ready to go, and I've pitched it to so many publishers, but to no success. And the feedback overall that I've gotten is that it's not marketable. So for me, it's, what do you mean it's not marketable? What does that mean? And yes, maybe it may seem like it's such a niche topic for a niche audience, but when you really think about it, it's a topic about an Australian Muslim who's made Australia his home and who's contributed to the large debate or to the large trajectory of Australian history that is often overlooked. And there's so much that we as Muslims can give and to show and to represent of what it means to be Australian that isn't discussed in the mainstream discourse. So I think there is a gap in that regard. I think the Australian publishing industry is doing better than it used to regarding diversity and publishing diverse voices. I don't know if that's because I am surrounded by diverse voices, so I see it a lot. or whether there is actually a jump in that. I think there is, but there is so much more that we can do. And I think, but I also understand that the publishing industry is facing a lot of pressures. We've got the AI issues that are emerging, where there's books that are just coming out, and where they're trying to navigate that space. There's also, geopolitical events that are influencing interest in certain projects. So I know nonfiction in Australia is declining. Interest in it is declining because people want escapism. People want, things that don't make them think about the real world, that don't make them think critically about, what's happening. So, I understand there's things around that, but I also think that there is a gap, and I think that the traditional publishing industry, yeah, I think there needs to be a review of it, and their process. They need to rethink how they do things, I suppose.
Yeah, well, I mean, there is a lot more pressure. I just read an article in The Guardian about how a lot more books are being published, a lot more editorial control, a lot less marketing. And
Yeah,
so even, like we all dream of that traditional publishing deal
yeah,
and how it's going to transform our lives. And then a lot of authors are ending up very disappointed with
yeah.
what's actually happening. And then I don't know, earlier, I think last year I read an article about debut authors who were using their advance to pay for a
Mm,
publicist.
yeah,
Now, I'm an indie author, so I did pay a publicist, but that's fine because that's my business. Everything that I am doing is to promote my business,
yes,
promote my small press. But the thought of my hard earned and tiny
yeah,
advance then being used for that when in the traditional publishing world, they control everything. They
yes,
control the covers, the marketing. Like as authors, we have a tiny, tiny input. And even then we are last on the list to be listed.
indeed. I think one of the things that always shocks me, and it shocked me when I first heard it. So when I interviewed Dr. Sarah Ayub for my two-time session, and because she's in the board for the Australian Society of Authors, and she basically said that authors in Australia earn $1 for every book that is sold in the traditional publishing space. So you imagine, and prices of books are skyrocketing. They went from $15 to $20 to $35. You're paying $35 for a book, and an author only gets $1 from that, and the rest is dispersed to the publishing house. Authors in Australia will earn more if you borrow their books. So whoever's listening, if you have not attended your library or haven't been to a library in a long time, please do consider, yes, as you can see, I've got a whole bunch of books behind me. I love buying books. I think I love the idea of having them as trophies and reading them. But I also think on top of that, we should be borrowing more, and we should be requesting more and supporting public spaces like libraries, because if we don't do that, then our authors suffer. And I think to add to all of this, I think the biggest problem we're having is the downplay of the humanities and the social sciences and literature in Australia. We are seeing, I mean, I know from my experience in academia, we are seeing a whole restructuring of the humanities disciplines, where thousands of people are losing their jobs because, priority is in place on the humanities. We've got skyrocketing, what do you call it? Prices for humanities degrees. Like students are paying up to $55,000 just to do a humanities degree. I mean, it's incredibly sad. So we were dealing with those pressures as well, and I think the emphasis or the lack of emphasis on the value of the humanities is putting pressure also on authors and on the publishing industry to reevaluate their priorities, but also to reevaluate their place in the Australian creative space. And on top of all that as well, for the Australian Muslim Review, I am doing this all by myself with absolutely no funding and absolutely no means to be able to pay the reviewers. I wish I could, but right now I can't. So for me now, I have to think about, and I will be for the following year, applying for grants and applying for funding. But that is going to be a whole process in and of itself, and whether I will be successful, I don't know. So there is also that competition because so many literary spaces need funding. there's so many more applying for funding and so little chance of receiving it. So I think there's also that whole structure also needs to be rethought. Is that a word? Yeah. So yeah, to add to that.
Yeah, even the way the publishing industry, they price ebooks in
Yes.
order to push people to buy the paperback.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a manipulation in a sense. And the shame of it is we buy everything. Like,
Mm,
when you want to read a book,
yeah.
I listen to audiobooks, I read ebooks, I read paperbacks, and there's no, I will do this instead of that. I will engage with the author depending on what's going on in my life. There's certain authors now that I always listen to their audiobooks because I've started the audiobook and I'm like, this is how I want to keep
Yeah.
consume.
Same. I'm the same. Yeah.
Yeah, but like we love reading and we love connecting with reading and we've got busy lives and so much going on. And so it's a shame that there's not enough innovation in
Yeah.
how things are thought about. We're trying to sort of apply those really outdated models and yeah, it's getting harder. And I
Mm,
don't think even the publishing industry is really acknowledging or, seeing the indie publishing world and
yeah.
how that is generating. Like, I know 4 authors off the top of my head: Fiona Tarr, Philippa Neffrey Clark, CJ Archer, and Kerry Arthur, all Australian authors, all earning 5 to 6 figures
Mm,
from their writing, who, the Australian publishing world has kind of never heard of.
mm. Yeah. Okay. See, I didn't hear. Haven't heard of them. So.
Yeah, yeah. And so, like they are genre
Mm,
fiction writers, but these are the people who are actually making a living from
yeah.
their writing and
Yeah.
not doing anything else, and who have the funds to, publish their books and an audiobook
Mm,
immediately because
yeah.
they have that readership and they have that ecosystem that they have.
Yeah, I think you raised a very important point because I think self-publishing for the longest time, and not just in Australia, I think globally as well, has been kind of seen as lesser than traditional publishing, without actually engaging in a conversation about what you can gain from being a self-published author versus what you will gain from being a traditional published author. Now, yes, traditional publishing, you will most often you will get the marketing, you will get the book tours and all of that stuff. But I actually listened to a podcast recently. It's called The Shit No One Told You About Writing, and I absolutely love it. So I highly recommend everyone listen to it. It's not Australian based, but I do love it. I learned so much from it. But I found out that not every author gets to have book tours or gets to have the publicity and the marketing behind them. So even if you are traditionally published, you may still need to, fish out money out of your own pockets or, volunteer your time or organize, your book launches and events and et cetera, to publicize your own book. And this is why so many publishing spaces also require authors or writers to have social media. And I feel like that's a very cheap way of getting their branding across, but making the author do all of the work. And I think I know some writers came up to me recently. I did a workshop on how to pitch to publishers and agents for the Sydney Muslim Writers Festival. And a lot of them came up to me and asked whether they should have social media. And I just said, no, you don't need social media. I don't think, if you can stay away from social media, please do stay away from it. I mean, I know it sounds hypocritical. I am on social media, but I am trying very hard to get off it or try to redirect elsewhere because I think, we already do so much. We already spent 4 or 5 years on one project and we pour our love and our heart into it. And then to have this expectation to do more to get it out there, I think is a little bit unfair. Whereas with self-publishing, like you said, Amra, you have a little bit more of that control and you get to be out there. And I think if you can get yourself out there in the first place, you've already opened yourself doors that you would never have imagined or would never have realized from a traditional publishing perspective. There is a dear friend of mine, Sarah Eltiket, who has self-published her middle grade fiction, the Doha series. And when I first interviewed her, she was the very first person that I interviewed for my tea time sessions. And she said, I did self-publishing because, at least I got my foot in the door. I'm an author, and I got to meet all these other incredible people, all these other incredible authors, self-published and traditionally published authors in the Muslim space that I never would have done otherwise. And I thought, I've never considered that before until she said it. And I'm like, you know what, you're right. I think, it's definitely an opportunity to get yourself out there. And it doesn't mean that you're less than someone who's traditionally published. I know so many books that have won awards because of, being indie published. And I think that's just something to be celebrated. I think it's something to be embarrassed about or shy.
No, and the other thing is there are so many more opportunities than we can think of. Like, you were telling authors not to go on social media, and I'm like, I had a moment where I'm like, oh, no, you should be on social media. And then I thought, no, actually, you don't,
Mm,
because there are so many different ways you can sell books. Like,
exactly.
there are people, because I started doing direct sales this year and going to events
Mm.
and interacting with readers and selling directly to readers. And I made it a mission to sort of go around and talk to different people and find out about that whole process. And I was like, there is a whole ecosystem of people
Yes.
selling their books who
Yeah.
are not relying on that, so there is no one way. And this
Exactly.
is joy now. And even like what you've been doing in your creative endeavors, you are redefining how to build a profile, how to connect, how to create a community. And that's what we need to be thinking about, and
Mm.
not thinking about just sales for the sake of it.
Exactly.
Because,
Yeah.
that doesn't happen. Like, if you're in the right space and the right time, but a lot of it is sort of building something and
Yes.
connecting.
And unfortunately, I hate to say this, but a lot of it is luck. A lot
Yes.
of our creative process and our networking opportunities relies on luck, but it also relies on initiative. So taking the initiative in the first place, I think, is where the opportunities come. And trying something new is where the opportunities come. Like I didn't start the Australian Muslim Review or Tea Time with Mirela because I wanted to gain something from it. I genuinely just wanted to have conversations, because I know how it feels to not feel not to feel like you're not part of a space because you don't have the opportunities for them. Like I said, I live in a remote place, so all of these opportunities that I constantly see happening in Sydney, and I'm like, I wish I could. Like if I probably did not have kids and I could just drive back and not worry about anything, perhaps maybe I would be more around those spaces. But unfortunately, that is not where I'm at the moment.
Thinking about more than just sales or audience or what you're going to get out of it. But then we also really need to talk about burnout and sustaining
Yeah.
creativity, because we've got all these creative projects. We've got so many things that we want to do. And so, you already spoke about the fact that you're having to put some things on pause while you're focusing on your PhD. What are some other things that you can share with people who are wanting to do these sort of things, start their own creative projects?
The biggest advice I can give is be true to yourself and to your intention. Because if you come with the intention of, let's say, I don't know, making more sales. Let's say you're an author trying to sell your book and your intention is just to make more money. I feel like that's already limited because you can't really control that. If you're creating spaces for genuine connection, to celebrate creativity, to grow personally as a writer, then I think you have the opportunity to sustain a project in the long term. Yes, so for example, like I said, I don't gain any monetary value or anything from doing what I do, but I love it. I love it so much. I am willing to put in the time to do it, and that is what is necessary. And unfortunately, it is what is required as a creative. You need to have that passion and that love, because the fruits of it, fruit of it might not be monetary, but there are so many other opportunities that you get, like meeting fantastic people, connecting with new audiences, like getting feedback and saying, oh my God, I really love that, or I really like how you approached this, or thank you so much for supporting my writing. Like I love getting that feedback. I was yesterday I was editing, copy editing reviews that came in for issue 2 of the Australian Muslim Review. And, I love like engaging in those conversations with writers and being like, hey, like I think we can improve here, or like why don't we work on this? What do you think? And then hearing their feedback and getting them and watching them grow as we're going through this editing process, that is more valuable to me than anything, like more than anything else. So yeah, my biggest advice is just know what your intentions are and be true to those intentions and be true to yourself. I mean, I don't shy away from being myself, no matter what platform I'm at. Even when I do my teaching, when I teach my students, you get what you see. Like I am myself. I'm not going to mask myself just because I am a teacher teaching you. I am. It's still a human being. I'm still a person, and I want you to feel that connection. I want you to feel comfortable in my space, and I want you to feel like you can learn and that you would love learning because I am encouraging you to be yourself and to learn in the process. So that is my
Yeah, I think because sometimes like I was just kind of approaching burnout a few weeks ago, and when you're in that space, you start sort of going, should I be doing this and should I be doing that? Maybe I should give this up. And whenever I have those moments, that intention is what is really important.
yeah.
It's like, why am I doing this? What am I trying to achieve? What is it that, I'm thinking about? And there's so many things that I did. Like I did a publication where we got a grant with the council. I did a Muslim leadership group, and then we
Mm.
wrote a book, What a Muslim Woman Looks Like, to like break the stereotypes. And then my friend Met and I got a trad publishing deal for growing up Muslim in Australia.
I love that. That was so good. I loved reading
I
that
know,
book.
it's such a great anthology and, it's been in schools and it's used in schools and I use it, when I'm teaching and I use a lot of the growing up series
Mm.
units that we teach. They're just such a brilliant
Yeah.
opportunity for young people to, find their own voice and to see
Yeah.
the diversity of Australia. And I remember when I was doing that leadership, I had a really my daughter wasn't even 1 years old.
Mm.
I was doing it just because I wanted to get out of the house, have some
Yeah.
sort of stimulation. And my husband was like, "What's the point of this? Why are you tiring yourself out like this?" And I said, "I don't know, but I just feel like this is something I need to do." And now
Yes,
I can look back and go, "Well, that led to this and led to this and led,"
exactly.
but at the time, you can't predict that.
No, you can't. And there have been lots and lots and lots of moments where I've wanted to give up, and I always ask myself, "What's the point?" And I do, I'll be honest, I do feel like a bit of an imposter because I don't have a book to my name that I can say aside from book chapters that I've done academically, and I don't have I haven't I've been awarded my PhD yet to say yes, like I can officially say I am a historian. But at the same time, I remind myself the things that I've done to get to this point are still very valid experiences, and I should take ownership of the fact that I know what I'm talking about for the most part. I hope, but kind of that self, like I feel like the self confidence and to acknowledge your process and where you've come and what you have had to do to get where you are. And that does not come without persistence, and that does not come without passion, and that does not come without love for what you want to do and what you want to achieve in your life.
Yeah, and, you can think things and always be like, "I'm not ready. I need
Yeah,
to do this thing to be able to do it," and I did that a lot too. I used to talk myself out of things, and
yeah,
I know this has to fall in place, and I feel like then I would watch other people, and I'd be like, "Why is that person who does not have, even, like, tiny bit of all of the things that I have and I have achieved, but they're doing that thing," and I'm like, "Because they tried."
yeah.
That's it. They
That's
put
exactly it.
themselves out there.
Yes, exactly.
Mm.
And, sometimes the first time gets you somewhere, and sometimes you just try and you just fly. And that's amazing. And I wish that for everyone. But sometimes you have to get through the hard work in order to finally get your wings and to soar above everyone else. But for each process has its own merits and its own values. And I think it's just about trusting it and trusting yourself.
Yeah, that is a beautiful way to end, I think. I'm so glad that We have now taken turns interviewing each
Yeah.
other. We've,
Yeah.
and you've done my book launch, and I helped with the Muslim Review
Yes.
launch, and this is the joy of connecting and finding people who are on the same path as you. So
Mm.
thank you so much, Mirela. Now, where can people engage with you and your work?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram, even though I'm trying to get away from it, but I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. So you can find me on Instagram with my full name, Mirela Cufurovic. I'm so used to anglicizing my name.
I know. I know.
Mirela Cufurovic. You can also find the Australian Muslim Review on Instagram as well as the Australian Muslim Review. So if you just type that in. The other platforms that you can find me on are Substack. So I have a Substack, same thing, same handle for everything, because I like to just not complicate things for myself. But I manage two Substacks. So one of them is the Australian Muslim Review, and the other is more of a personal Substack called Writing History, where I talk about literature and history, my two loves. And if you are a historian or an academic, or you're in the academia space, you can also find me on LinkedIn with my full name. So those are the spaces that I'm.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Mirela. And you've really given me a bit of a dose of inspiration that I need
No,
as I'm
thank
sort of
you.
coming out of burnout a little bit. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It was such a pleasure to speak with you, Amra, as always.
Oh. Thank you for tuning in to Amra's Armchair Anecdotes. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and follow for more insights, stories, and inspiration. From my armchair to yours, remember, every story begins with a single word.